Not sure if this is a racist camo. Probably is. I like it though. Looks good. Today we're talking about one of the most insane theories that exists, and the sheer fact that this is something that anyone takes seriously leads me to believe that we have hope in the world. Yay! Whimsy! Wait till you see it. Wait till you see it. Whimsy! We love the most whimsical conspiracy theories on this channel, and that's it. We like to keep, the rabbit holes light, the rabbit holes fun. Today we're gonna be talking about Saddam Hussein and his Stargate.
It's like a conduit from one planet to another. It's a shimmering pool of water that you walk into.
That's right. Saddam Hussein talked to aliens and had a Stargate.
There's one theory that the Iraq war was actually a war about a Stargate.
Didn't know that? Well, no, you do. Or whatever. I don't know. You probably, we're gonna see. This is crazy though. A lot of people believe this, including myself. I'm just saying it makes a lot of sense. The timelines line up. Thank you to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. There are some things in life that it is okay to leave up to being a total crapshoot. Like trying a new type of milk in your coffee, buying a cheap product you saw on Instagram, or trying a new recipe for din. But finding the right doctor for your health should not be a total crapshoot. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors that will fit you and your needs perfectly. Plus, you can click to instantly book an appointment. That's right, baby. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every single specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care, skin care, everything in between. You can also filter by doctors who take your specific insurance, who are located nearby, who are a good fit for any medical need you have, and who are also rated by verified patients, which is incredibly important. On the app, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time that works best for you, and once again, click to instantly book a visit. On top of that, you can even sometimes score same-day appointments and typically get one set up within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. My family and I have used ZocDoc before, and you should too. Go to ZocDoc.com/Oompaville. Yeah, do it. ZocDoc.com/Oompaville. Supports the channel. Thank you to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. It's a free app. You lose nothing. It's cool. Get checked out, man. Most of you are familiar with the invasion of Iraq, but what if the invasion of Iraq wasn't just about oil and weapons of mass destruction, but it was about something much more, something more meaningful, something heavier, something otherworldly, and there were aliens involved. And that's what I'm going to convince you of today. There is a conspiracy theory that you may or may not have heard of regarding the true intentions behind the United States invasion of Iraq.
Saddam Hussein wanted to make Iraq a regional and perhaps a global superpower. He spoke about himself as the new Nebuchadnezzar.
The theory would have you believe that Saddam Hussein was in control of a Stargate, and the United States invaded to seize control of this alien portal before he could use it.
It sounds far-fetched, but this theory is widely believed.
By the way, little appeal to ancient knowledge here, to Hermeticism. The conspiracy predates the 21st century. The roots of it go all the way back to the 6th century BC. The original tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists existed at this time. Ever heard of Nebuchadnezzar? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, guys. That's what I'm saying. Let's get ready. This is gonna be awesome. Freaky Pete on the track with another sick beat. That'd be funny if Petey was a rap star.
Your block, no by outside. Somebody died. I'm gonna cake him slide. You shine it and stop lying.
So this bad boy goes all the way back to the rule of Nebuchadnezzar's Neo-Babylonian Empire. And this may be one of the most insane, far-fetched conspiracy theories in existence of all time, but it is incredibly interesting, and anyone with a bit of a fascination of potentially history, potentially archaeology, aliens, war. Every time I mention anything about being autistic or having hyperfixations, people are like, "You're just using that as an excuse to be an asshole." Shut up! Do I look normal? You! I'm just saying I love this stuff, all right, guys? And by the way, little forewarning to any normies out there, this is gonna require some serious mental gymnastics, so strap in, but it has gotta be one of the funniest conspiracy theories to date that I've ever learned about, that I've ever talked about, and it could easily become my favorite of all time, and this could very quickly become your favorite if you're not careful. All right, guys? All right, guys? And girl? Ur and the Great Ziggurat. The location we're talking about is called the Great Ziggurat of Ur, or Ur. The ziggurat, is it ziggurat? It can't be ziggurat. That's what I've been saying my whole life, but I sound like an idiot. Ziggurat. Pronounce.
Ziggurat.
Oh, fuck. The location we're talking about today is the Great Ziggurat of Ur. The ziggurat is a giant structure that looks like a fortress in its own right. All right, it's massive, perhaps perfectly sized to hold a stargate, maybe. I don't know, you be the judge of that, all right? You guys are very, very judgmental in the comments. This bad boy now looks very different than it did when it was created.
As you can see here, we're on the top level, or I mean not the top of the first level.
Top of the ziggurat.
The first level of the ziggurat.
Okay.
That would have been the second level right there.
The ziggurat was the crown jewel of the city of Ur, and Ur was a city that could be seen as the heart of the world at its peak. Do you remember? The old days, the old times. Have you ever read about the old times? Everything was small back then and simple. The area is now known as Iraq. You're familiar with it, I'm sure. Saddam Hussein, the Iraq invasion, etc., etc.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, anyway.
It used to be called, in the ancient times, Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is often referred to as the Fertile Crescent or cradle of civilization due to the ideal nature and conditions for humanity to evolve technologically, sociologically, aristocratically. Now we're a technocratic feudalist state. And it's all thanks to Mesopotamia, guys. Triangle. Conspiracy.
Mesopotamia is an exceedingly fertile plain situated between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. For 5 millennia, this small strip of land situated in what is today Iraq, Kuwait, and Syria fostered innovations that would change the world forever.
Some technological innovations directly attributed to this region are things like writing, let's see, the wheel, let me think, maybe agriculture, and irrigation. This is all according to the incredibly valid source of history.com. Because, you know, they kind of hit the History Channel fell off a little bit, all right? I can do this type of shit. The History Channel does nonsense like this legitimately. And they do a good job, to be honest. I am so hot in this jacket now. Now back to the ancient city of Ur. At the heart of this great city was the ziggurat, a religious temple dedicated to the city's patron deity, Nana. I'm sure it's not pronounced like that, but I don't give a. Nana was the moon god, and the ziggurat was an administrative building where people would also bring their agricultural surplus and receive food allotments because they were a bunch of commies back then. The beautiful city of Ur was at its peak around 2100 BC and was considered to be the capital of the Sumerian Empire at one point, right before Cleveland became the capital. Yes, that's right. Ohio represent.
Oh shit, Cook. Goddamn. Oh shit, soda, Cook. Hey, Cook, we got the goddamn minutes of car here, so. What the fuck?
Just kidding. I made that shit up. That's misinformation. Everything else, though, is true. Everything else factual. Ur, positioned directly on the Euphrates River, was a hub of trade, and it had massive defensive walls, districts, canals, surrounded by farmlands. It was a beautiful, magical place. Oh, to have lived near Ur in 2100 BCE. Or BC. Let's just go with BC. As you might guess, Ur wouldn't stand forever, and it's a city many people likely have never heard of, or at very least haven't thought of in years since they've been out of school. And its decline could be attributed to many different things. The Euphrates River would change course over time, and now Ur falls south of it. Salination of the soil greatly impacted agriculture, and the backbone of Ur's economy was agriculture. So, you know, talk about total destruction of a city. You reroute the river and then you over-salinate the soil? Thanks, Jod. Jeez. Maybe that's what you get for worshiping false idols like Nana, though. Just saying. So Ur was once beautiful and now is a desert. The Elamites would even sack Ur in 1940s BC in an attack that would end the third dynasty of Ur, and the city would never truly recover its independence or greatness. These Elamites, huge assholes. Don't like them at all. Ur would then go to the rule of the Amorites, and that would be the first dynasty of Babylon. They'd pass around Ur to several other dynasties and empires. It was centuries and centuries. It was confusing and it didn't make a lot of sense. Very similar to Cleveland. So it would seem that Ur was a city resigned to its fate, falling further and further into ruin. That is, until it would find itself under the rule of Nebuchadnezzar in the 6th century BCE. Ever heard of Nebuchadnezzar? How about that name? Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar. What the f? Who names their kid that? Holy shit. I'm naming my kid King Solomon. Just kidding. I'm naming my kid Nebuchadnezzar, because that's a sick name. Shit goes hard as Nebuchadnezzar was the second king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, commonly called Nebuchadnezzar the Great. That's not a very unique name though. Everyone back then seemed to add the Great after their name because they loved themselves and they thought of themselves as great. He was a warrior king, Nebuchadnezzar. He was known for his military prowess and his drip. Look at this son of a. He led campaigns across the Eastern Mediterranean. He conquered Egypt and built and expanded the Babylonian Empire. He was a man of great renown. Living under his rule was pretty good, to say the least, with Babylon being an incredibly beautiful place and, you know, the greatness of Ur and the area kind of returning a bit under the man. Don't believe me that Nebuchadnezzar was a badass? Ever heard of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of these 7 wonders of the ancient world? Well, guess what? Nebuchadnezzar. All right, guys. Nebuchadnezzar was attributed to this era of rule a great time in Babylon, and the standard of living was quite high, relatively speaking, for the area. The citizens then had access to goods, and there were great cultural influences from all over of what was then known as the world. The world was small, but it was like, come to Babylon. It's like Cleveland.
You like it? You think Cleveland's cool? I mean, I never heard anybody say I'm going to Cleveland on vacation.
If Nebuchadnezzar's accomplishments weren't impressive enough, he was also hailed as a religious savior and as the destroyer of nations in religious texts. Destroyer of nations, that's huge back in the day. All right, that would be like, wow, what a asshole. Now this guy's like, no, this was awesome in the 6th century BC. So things were different then. By the way, you've probably heard of Nebuchadnezzar. If you've ever read the Bible, the Old Testament, he makes quite a few appearances. There are 2 contradicting descriptions of Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Jeremiah, though, in the Old Testament, all right? He's referred to as the servant of God numerous times, and he's hailed as a great and powerful leader. But on the flip side, he's also a warrior. I'm getting a call. Oh, it's Nebuchadnezzar. He's calling me from, that's the Cleveland area code. Hello? Anyways, you'll find Nebuchadnezzar talked about in the Old Testament. He is referred to as a servant of God numerous times. He's hailed as a great and powerful leader. But on the flip side, he's also a warrior king, and he's attributed to the destruction of the kingdom of Judah after he sieged and eventually conquered Jerusalem. This rapscallion looted the temple of Solomon and brought back the temple's 3 wise men, Shad, Mesh, and Abe, to Babylon, along with many other Israelites. So he's kind of like an interesting guy. He's talked about many times, many different places in the Old Testament. Our old boy Nebuchadnezzar demanded fierce loyalty like many kings back in the day. And in the book of Daniel, when he brought those he had kidnapped from Jerusalem back to Babylon, it is proclaimed that everyone must have fell down and worshiped the image of gold set up by King Nebuchadnezzar. I assume, and if not, you die. I'd assume you'd die, you'd get killed. You'd get your head removed from your body. When music played, by the way, it's important to remember that this is a society of great beauty and great progress, very liberal. So when the music plays, it was horns, flutes, lyres, harps, pipes, and zithers, which are those boxes with like 30 or 40 metal strings across them. Those things look fun, dude. And those who didn't follow these directions of worship with the music were to be thrown into a blazing furnace. All right. You tell me how good of a guy Nebuchadnezzar is. All right. So these 3 old country boys that Nebuchadnezzar stole from Jerusalem refused to serve Nebuchadnezzar and his gods, and they swung their large penises in his face by telling him, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, Your Majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Now that is flagrant disrespect. And obviously, Nebuchadnezzar was quite upset by that, and he had them bound and thrown into a fiery furnace. And that's the end of the video. Just kidding. That's not the end yet. That's up. And you see, this is where things become quite strange. According to the book of Daniel, the furnace was so hot that the soldiers who were tasked with taking the 3 wise men there were killed by the flames. And the 3 wise men would fall into the blaze, but rather than burn and die, they would come out of the fire and they wouldn't be alone. Interesting, interesting. One of those rats. One of those rats. Ooh.
Oh, shit! Alright!
Any rational, logical man in the time of Nebuchadnezzar would think that Shad, Mesh, and Abe would be dead or dying, having fell into that massive blaze, tossed into the massive blaze. Even the men that led them there died. So it would be surprising when Nebuchadnezzar would see those 3 men walking around, and this time with a 4th. Who the? They were unbound, unharmed, and there was another guy. Who's this other guy? Is that Jonald Jafari?
Sometimes down at the pub they'd call me Dan, but my name isn't Dan. I was once visited by an alien species. They referred to me as...
Fuck, it is. No, it's not. It's not JonTron. It's not JonTron. The presence of a 4th man was a shock in its own right, but the book of Daniel recalls Nebuchadnezzar proclaiming, "The 4th looks like a son of the gods." What does that mean? I don't exactly know, and we'll never know. But there are a lot of speculative theories, and I really like that. Now, to speak more to that, there are already conspiracists that speculate what we believed were ancient gods were actually just aliens that were only perceived to be gods given the advanced technology that they'd have possession of to reach Earth and mess with us. And most things that you'd think were magic back in the day or acts of God could just be alien shit.
The teacher here is supposed to be the most intense and demanding instructor in all of clowning, and shit, it's Roger, isn't it? It's gonna be Roger.
All right, jagoffs, the name's H.J. Rimmons.
For example, science fiction author and scientist Arthur C. Clarke has been famously quoted saying, "Any sufficient advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." Like if I took this phone back to the medieval era and showed, you know, some peasants OnlyFans or something like that, they'd be like, wow! Their heads would explode, dude. Imagine showing them Homelander. That'd be crazy. Showing them The Boys, be like, this is what it's like in the future. And they'll be like, oh, you're so divided. You're so divided. Why are you guys so divided? I mean, we're living in feudal France, and I live on a fiefdom. If I steal a carrot, I get my hand removed from my body, but I'd rather that and live a life of peace in my hovel than live a life of division, masquerading as a life of freedom. And, I don't know. Shut the f up, peasant. Could this 4th man, this son of the gods, have been one such alien that had intervened to save these 3 wise men from Jerusalem? Nebuchadnezzar, according to the book of Daniel, once again, would convert religions then and there. He had his own road to Damascus moment, but because of a blaze. Nebuchadnezzar said that anyone who would deny the God of Shad, Mesh, and Abe, by the way, that's not their names, I'm just shortening them because I'm not sure how to say them. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I don't know. Nebuchadnezzar said anyone who would deny their God would be cut to pieces and their houses burned to rubble. This guy, over the top, giant asshole. What is going on with this guy? He's also not a man of conviction. He just sees a fiery blaze and another guy come out of that. Could be a little bit of trickery, tricknology, illusion, some kind of Yakubian illusion magic. And he's like, oh wow, every man shall bend the knee. I don't blame him. If I saw that shit, I'd be doing backflips. So yeah, there's all that. And back to the speculative theory that I mentioned, this theory suggests that this event was actually the opening of a stargate. Makes perfect sense to me. And this stargate was connected to another world. That's how stargates work if you haven't seen the show Stargate. And that is why rather than have these 3 men burn, the 3 men were able to return from the blaze with another man in tow. Another wise man. Not a hair on their head or a fiber of their clothes were singed, scorched, or blackened by the intense heat of the furnace that had killed the soldiers escorting them, which that doesn't make that much sense, to be honest. Those guys were made of like cotton or something. They burnt up immediately.
This calls for the old Sherlock Holmes celebratory smoke. I'll just light my pipe.
That sucks. What a damn old dirty. Now, whether or not this was a Stargate might require a level of mental gymnastics. For me, it doesn't. I just believe things that I read instantaneously. Now, it isn't totally known where this took place, obviously, but if one were to try and argue that this did take place in Ur, you could point to a footnote of the following Bible passage that describes how the astrologers that did come forward to denounce the Jews when the music played, they were Chaldeans, which another name for Ur was Ur-Kasdim, which translates to Ur of the Chaldeans. This name for Ur is present in the Torah and in the Hebrew Bible. The taking place of this event in Ur is very important because of the location of the Great Ziggurat of Ur. We need this religious monument in the story because that's where the Stargate is, all right? And the Great Ziggurat of Ur was rebuilt by Nebuchadnezzar during his restoration of Babylon. So if there was a place to hold a mass proclamation of faith from those you'd conquered and make a spectacle of executing those who did not convert, why wouldn't you do it from such a grand religious structure that subsequently holds a Stargate? These are the mental gymnastics that I was mentioning earlier for some people that they may have to take, and the suspension of disbelief required for this conspiracy to hold water. And I hope you guys are still thugging this one out with us. It still gets crazier. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. So after these events, little information is known, nor is it really relevant for quite a while. But we do know that King Nabonidus, the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, continued the restoration of the Great Ziggurat of Ur. We also know that in 1850, the ruins of the ziggurat were rediscovered by William Loftus, and it was in terrible shape and was largely covered in sand and dunes from over a millennia of blowing winds and just, I don't know, irrelevance of Babylon. Babylon really fell off, all right? Like, actually. Skip forward to the 1920s and 30s. That is when extensive excavation of the ziggurat would commence. Sorry, the ziggurat. I want to say ziggurat really badly because I'm from Virginia and I'm a country boy. Excavation would commence under the supervision of Sir Leonard Woolley, under the direction of the University of Pennsylvania and the British Museum. They discovered tombs filled with treasures, large paintings, and the body of Queen Puabi, who had been buried with her 2 attendants. Now, what isn't mentioned is a Stargate, unfortunately, for me. But just because they didn't mention it doesn't mean that it isn't a thing that was discovered, because someone would find the Stargate if the theory, the speculative theory, is to be believed. And that person is none other than the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar himself, Saddam Hussein. Holy sh... Oh my... Are you telling me Saddam Hussein is the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar? And he has a Stargate from 1700 BC? Fuck! Are you shitting my... Right now, are you shitting on my penis? Don't shit on my penis. That's rude and weird. Some people might like that. I don't like that. That's unclean. I'll burn you in a fiery blaze. And then you will emerge with another who resembles the son of God or whatever the Saddam, aka the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar, would set out to rebuild Babylon again for like the 15th time. And this was during the 1980s, and Mr. Hussein spent millions of dollars on his own reconstruction of Babylon. He even built Saddam's palace near the ruins of Nebuchadnezzar's northern palace in Babylon, and the bricks used throughout his reconstruction were stamped with his own name, and his mission to restore Babylon was done in the footsteps of Nebuchadnezzar. Saddam's restoration was very ambitious and went well beyond Babylon, even into Ur. He tried to restore the Great Ziggurat. Okay, guys? And images before and after show just how dedicated this man was to this project. He restored the bottom tier, the stairs, and not the top. The ziggurat, the top of it, wouldn't reach completion. I mean, check this out. It looks pretty cool. I want one of these. I'm gonna build one of these. Just kidding, I'm not gonna build one of these because that would be stupid as fuck. Also, side note, I almost bought one of Saddam's golden revolvers one time. I was outbid by a little bit. They weren't that expensive. They were surprisingly cheap, but he had a bunch of golden revolvers. I almost bought one. That guy stole a lot of gold from the people of Iraq. He was an asshole. He's kind of the Nebuchadnezzar of his time. Let's be real. During Saddam's reconstruction of the Great Ziggurat of Ur, he would discover the Stargate, and a discovery of this magnitude would necessitate protection from probing eyes outside Saddam's control. For example, America, any other country in the West. They want the Stargate. They don't want this guy, if true, to have a portal to another world that was used to be in control by a god king, Nebuchadnezzar. What the fuck? The location of the ziggurat of Ur and the Stargate was within a security zone when Saddam and Iraq had control of the area. It was an Iraqi Air Force base. Now it's like an airport or some shit like that. But for a while, when we had control of it after we destroyed them, it was Camp Adder. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff there. Doesn't look like there's a Stargate, but that's beside the point. So the speculative theory suggests that by controlling this location and the Stargate within, Saddam Hussein either did or soon would possess advanced technology and weaponry, potentially alien in nature. And whether or not the weapons were from the stars or a portal to the stars was present there, there still is a case narrative report from this fella Bernard Rosker, who was a special assistant in the investigation of Gulf War illnesses, which is a huge phenomenon post-Gulf War. It's important to note, we went to Iraq twice, once during Operation Desert Storm, the Gulf War, and then the invasion of Iraq in 2003, or Iraq, whatever. I don't know how to say any word ever. Operation Desert Storm resulted in a lot of mysterious illnesses, and they claim they know why. One of the theories is that there was chemical alien technologies in Saddam's palace and the surrounding area. And by the way, why didn't we just usurp Saddam in Operation Desert Storm? Is because we wanted to remove Iraq and the Republican fucking entity from Kuwait. That was what we destroyed. The Republican Guard, 3 of the 4 divisions in like a day, essentially annihilated them. Could have completely taken all of it. We didn't for some reason. I don't really know exactly why. Let's ask the United Nations. Maybe they wanted to see if he actually was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar and they wanted to give him a chance because everyone believes in second chances. So anyways, a lot of misunderstanding and area of gray surrounding Desert Storm. Why didn't we remove Saddam Hussein from power then? And then we went back 12 years later, 2003, perhaps word of this discovery in a Stargate falling into the hands of an enemy. Maybe it didn't sit well with the Pentagon. Maybe they were like, well, we should have acted sooner. This is not our Nebuchadnezzar. This is our Agamemnon. So once again, in 2003, the United States Armed Forces, joined by a coalition of allies, invaded Iraq. And while the American people were told it was due to the suspected possession of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, the Stargate might have been the real reason we went in, because there were no weapons of mass destruction. It was all a lie. It was all a lie. It was all fake, and it was all a lie. And thousands upon thousands American lives have been ruined. And not to mention the lives of Iraqis and people in that area. Holy shit. Shit, I don't know. I believe it. The real reason we went to Iraq in 2003 was because Saddam Hussein had a Stargate. I believe that. I believe that. Let me know. Comment down below. What do you guys think about that? Do you think this is the biggest drama the Middle East has ever seen? Let me know. America employed shock and awe tactics to showcase our overwhelming power and domination of the sky and every other nation, including the one of fire. We conducted operations that were spectacles to the eye as well as very destructive, because we are very destructive. The goal with our shock and awe in Iraq was to paralyze the enemy with fear and leave them unable to react and respond to the invasion and demoralize them, etc., etc. Art of War Sun Pu, or whatever his name is. Sun Tzu, I forget what his name is. Sun Pu? Is it Sun Pu? No, it's Sun Tzu. In our second go-round in Iraq, 2003, we employed shock and awe tactics yet again and demonstrated our overwhelming superiority in power in every single way, specifically from the sky. Our planes and jets and bombers and globetrotters and helicopters and paragliders are awesome. We conducted operations with the intent to paralyze with fear, destroy the Iraqi Republican Guard within an instant. The United States invasion of Iraq began March 20th, 2003, and by April 9th, 3 weeks into the invasion, Saddam Hussein's the statue of Saddam Hussein in Baghdad's Firdos Square was toppled in a monumental moment, signifying the great strides made in conquering Iraq and the freedom that we brought them, that we brought the people of Iraq again for the second time. While victory was technically achieved, I guess, and was announced by President George W. Bush on May 1st, 2003, a month and a half after the invasion,
is a grave danger to the civilized world and will be confronted.
The next several months were spent dismantling the Hussein regime and also golfing. Now watch this drive. I know you've got a stargate, or I know you have a star door and your ziggurat, Saddam. We're gonna dismantle your ziggurat. We're gonna get in your star door. We're gonna talk to the Anunnaki. We're gonna talk to the aliens. All right, you son of a... In late May, the Iraqi army was disbanded, and in June, Saddam's sons Uday and Qusay were killed by US troops in Mosul. In December, Saddam was finally captured and later executed in December 2006 following his trial. If Saddam Hussein had really controlled the Stargate or possessed advanced technologies, it's peculiar that the invasion was so swift and efficient at toppling his regime. Not only then, but also in Desert Storm. Like, he probably didn't have this stuff because like he was so weak. They're so weak. It's great. We have Stargates, it sounds like. America does. So the Iraqi military was toppled quickly for the second time and fully toppled and removed in very little time. And he was driven into exile the second time in 2003 up to 2006, when Saddam was finally officially put out of his misery. So if Saddam Hussein really had a Stargate or possessed advanced technologies, it's kind of bizarre that the invasion was so swift both times. I mean, it was really swift in Operation Desert Storm, but we didn't fully topple the regime. And in the Iraq War, it was swift, and he was driven into exile very quickly, and his thing was pushed over, and yeah, it was embarrassing. And that makes me wonder if maybe there is another reason for the invasion of Iraq besides a Stargate or weapons of mass destruction that never happened to exist in the first place, allegedly, according to valid sources. The primary reasoning for the Iraq War and the invasion of Iraq, the second invasion of Iraq, was weapons of mass destruction. That's what I remember as a kid. He's got weapons of mass destruction. This guy, he's a bad hombre, all right? And I'm a puppet in a political dynasty. My father was the director of the CIA, all right? Shut up! Now watch this drive. Old George W. Bush was talking about weapons of mass destruction as if it were a matter of fact and not speculation. That was not the case, and there was no Stargate either that they found or told us about, so perhaps there was another reason we entered Iraq altogether. Have you ever heard of Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh? The Tomb of Gilgamesh. This part's going to be pretty confusing, so I apologize in advance, but I'm going to try my best to combine this speculative theory, which involves Saddam, Nebuchadnezzar, and the Epic of Gilgamesh in one similar overarching pergola of ideas. So bear with me, son of a... And press like if you also believe that this is true and happened and this is fact. After learning about Nebuchadnezzar and his story, and of course that Saddam Hussein believed himself to be Nebuchadnezzar, we have to explain some more important parallels between the two. As you know from the previous section and some of the stuff we've shown in this video, Saddam Hussein believed in some bizarre shit. But on top of it, he believed himself to be the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. Born in Uruk, Iraq, and died in Babylon thousands of years ago. He believed this so much so, he would copy the story of the great king, carving his name into every brick, the same as Nebuchadnezzar did. Now, we've made this clear, we now have to go way back before Saddam. We gotta go before even Nebuchadnezzar. 6th century BC, the guy was around, there's actual like historical evidence that he existed. We have to return to the time of the Epic of Gilgamesh, when it was written. Have you ever heard of the Epic of Gilgamesh? The Epic of Gilgamesh. In ancient Mesopotamian mythology, there was a king of Uruk, a story of a man on the search and quest for immortality. He was 2/3 God and 1/3 man. A powerful and wise king, but also oppressive and arrogant to his people, a giant asshole. Common theme. This should sound familiar because Nebuchadnezzar was also this type of ruler. So was Saddam, but not a god. He was not 2/3 God. He died like a dog. He was good at hiding though, which god hid a lot. In the epic, the poor people prayed to be saved from Gilgamesh, saved from his harsh rule. So the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives with the animals. Now we have to point back to Nebuchadnezzar again, and in the book of Daniel 4:15-17, he is described to be drenched with the dew of heaven and let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal till 7 times pass by for him. In Nebuchadnezzar's case, he was turned into what Enkidu is described. It was also repeated more in the book of Daniel with focus on wild animals and realizing he is not the strongest or most powerful being. And this, back to Gilgamesh, becomes true as he fights with Enkidu, the wild man. And after a fierce fight, they become close friends due to realizing each other's strengths and nobility. Very awesome story. Afterward, they team up and head to the cedar forest to slay Humbaba, which is a monstrous guardian who exists in this domain. They slay the beast thanks to the help of Shamash, the sun god, Requiescatu Pace, ass Mumbaba. Then a great tree is cut down by Gilgamesh and Enkidu, a sign of challenging the gods, and this pulls comparisons to Daniel 4 back to Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar had a dream and had yet to understand its importance. He talks about a great tree in the middle of the land that was so abundantly large that it touched the sky and was visible from all ends of the earth, which is not true because the earth is round. You know, we've known that for a very long time, but alas. Because the tree was so enormous, it fed the land below and provided animals of the earth shelter and safety, and even the birds in the branches. The story is of Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, according to Daniel, and his influence, how it stretched far and wide, and he had become a great and powerful leader. But he's eventually punished because this great influence by the Most High, and because of it, the tree will become a stump and it's his kingdom falling, you know. So the Epic of Gilgamesh ties in quite closely to the Epic of Nebuchadnezzar, and we know that Saddam is the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar, okay? This is awesome, dude. So back to the Epic of Gilgamesh. It is not done. The story continues of Gilgamesh when the goddess Ishtar wishes to wed with Gilgamesh. However, he rejects her because he's got Riz, and because of this, she becomes enraged, and she sends the bull of heaven to punish him because he deserves it. In spite of this, and having since combined forces, Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill the bull. This angers the gods even more. These guys are rapscallions. Eventually, Enkidu is killed from disease, and he leaves Gilgamesh with his grief alone and terrified more of his mortality. We can compare this once again to Nebuchadnezzar, who wishes to continue his mighty empire forever, but he is merely a man, so he will eventually die. Due to the fate that Enkidu fell upon, Gilgamesh is determined on his quest even further, wishing for immortality. He is on the quest to find the Utnapishtim. This is the only human who is granted immortality by the gods. So he travels far and wide in search of this blessed being. When he finally meets the man, Utnapishtim, this feller tells Gilgamesh a story about a great flood, which also aligns into the biblical story of Noah and the Ark and how Utnapishtim was able to become immortal, guys. There are how many flood tales and stories and Nebuchadnezzar's, and this is crazy. Utnapishtim then challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights with no pill, no meth, to prove his worthiness. However, he fails because he is tired and a sleepy baby. However, it is not without some gain, as Utnapishtim's wife tells Gilgamesh of the secret plant to which he can restore his youth. However, when retrieving the plant, he loses it to a serpent while bathing. Guys, I hate it when that happens. My fountain of youth. Oh my God. Because of all this, Gilgamesh learns a valuable lesson and realizes that mortality is better and more beautiful in regard, as his accomplishments and legacy left behind is still valuable in spite of him no longer living physically. And the importance of this tale is that the inevitability of death means that there is importance in your life, and you should live a full and meaningful life to compensate for a short lifespan. So it's a badass story, right? Like, it's pretty cool. A lot of good archetypes we're all very familiar with. Only the gods can live forever, and we are not gods. We are merely humans. Once again, this falls similar to Nebuchadnezzar's realization that there is a divine power above him that is more powerful than even he can imagine, and because of this, he recognizes the divine sovereignty, and he bows his knee to the three wise men who appear from the fire. We already went over this. And Nebuchadnezzar, recognizing this, similar to how Gilgamesh recognized it, he receives his kingdom again and falls away from his madness after realizing he is not the most powerful king. So yes, I absolutely and completely butchered the Epic of Gilgamesh and simplified this long-ass epic tale. Butchered it in every single way. I'm not a historian. If you want to read the story yourself, you can go ahead and do that. It's pretty good, honestly. The names are fun to say, and Humbaba, may you rest in piss. It is the oldest known epic poem in the world. It's pretty interesting to look back as far as you can into history, unless you don't give a but you should, though. It's pretty interesting. So how does this impact the legacy of Gilgamesh? Is he a mythological character, or is he a real man? It is believed that his life was in fact true and he did actually exist. And despite the legend, the lands far and wide who had read his tale, people wonder if this was actually a real human being. He was, apparently, according to the Department of Defense and the CIA and the Pentagon. This is where stuff gets very strange, and you're really gonna need to twist your tinfoil hat on very tight, because this is like a confusing 4chan type speculative theory. Gilgamesh is often referred to as a hero in ancient Mesopotamian mythology, and if you are familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh, you know who he is. He's the king of Uruk. He's mostly known through this. He's just a character basically in a really famous, extremely old book. But it is believed that he is a real person, as I mentioned. Apparently this guy Gilgamesh was ruling around 2800 BC to 2300 BC, but the exact dates are impossible to know because that's a long time ago. There are fragments and inscriptions that give small details to the life of Mr. Gilgamesh, but his real life will forever remain a mystery. But we do know that Gilgamesh was buried beneath the Euphrates. The exact location of the tomb, still unknown, but that's where he was buried, okay? Gilgamesh's tomb is an extremely sought-after archaeological find similar to the tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, and also that who was eaten by crabs. What's her name? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called her. That's rude. That's rude. That's rude as fuck. I shouldn't have said that. I feel bad now. Sorry. I'm sorry. She was eaten by coconut crabs. So what makes the tomb of Gilgamesh so sought after is not only the contents within the tomb, the loot, as people say, but also the implications on the actual epic. Is it real? Is the story of is the Epic of Gilgamesh? It's another flood. Like, it's a huge thing that it would be cool to know whether or not a part of it is genuinely true and real. If the tomb were found, it would confirm that the Epic of Gilgamesh in some sense is true, because Gilgamesh is found and maybe we can find Humbaba. Furthermore, since the Epic of Gilgamesh is so intertwined with religious texts and stories, it would add evidence and give credence to different religious prophecies and other sort of Old Testament stuff. This would be a massive deal, not only for the history of Iraq, but the history of human civilization in itself. Now, back in 2003, some archaeologists believe they found the tomb of Gilgamesh. This news was published in BBC News and caused swarms of people to travel to the area and try to either see what they discovered or try to find it themselves. This included George W. Bush and the United States military. Yes, you heard that correctly. George Bush and the United States military were trying to find the Gilgamesh's tomb, or at least that's what the speculative theorists believe. On March 20th, 2003, the United States began the invasion of Iraq. On the surface, it is widely believed that the motive for that was to disarm Iraq's weapons of mass destruction and topple Saddam Hussein's regime. But as the war continued on, it was discovered that there were no weapons of mass destruction. So people were like, well, why else did they go there, guys? And the conclusion is that George Bush wanted to find the tomb of Gilgamesh. Potentially there was a stargate inside of that. That is a real theory. That is, there's a Gilgamesh's tomb found and then we suddenly invade Iraq. That's confusing. Why would we do that? So is there any evidence at all for any of this stuff? During the invasion in 2003, thousands of artifacts were smuggled out of Iraq and back into the US. You know, a lot of the items that were plundered were ancient clay tablets, and these items were being kept as war trophies or sold on illegal markets once they reached the US. In 2008, the US started Operation Lost Treasure to crack down on illegal dealers and return artifacts. And in recent years, the United States government has returned over 17,000 items back to Iraq, improving our overall relations between us and them, because we stole a lot of shit. And, you know, if you know someone who was in either the Gulf War or the invasion of Iraq, probably stole some shit. You probably have heard some stories. One item in particular has really sparked the conspiracy speculative theorists to gain some traction and build a bit of controversy. Among the thousands of items returned to Iraq was a 3,500-year-old tablet containing a portion of the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is factual. This is crazy. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, maybe it was purely coincidental that that soldier brought back a piece of the Epic of Gilgamesh without knowing. Maybe he just accidentally did it. I mean, whoever picked up a slab and couldn't read ancient Akkadian Sanskrit and then just was like, this looks fucking cool, I'm taking this back. Back to North Carolina. It's just a cool tablet. The theory goes deeper though. While these artifacts were being brought back to the United States, there were multiple large buyers, including the large American retail store, Hobby Lobby. That's right, guys. The real Hobby Lobby. More specifically, the family that owns Hobby Lobby, they were buying large amounts of smuggled in clay tablets from the invasion of Iraq for their museum of the Bible located in Washington, D.C. In 2010, the Green family paid $1.6 million to the UAE and bought cuneiform tablets, clay bullae, and cylinder seals. Most of the artifacts had no history of ownership, pointing to the fact that they were looted by soldiers in 2003. Furthermore, it is believed that some of the pieces were taken from the National Museum of Iraq, which was looted in 2003 once again, which is up. In 2011, U.S. Customs seized all the shipments meant for the Green family as a part of Operation Lost Treasure, and a few years later, in 2017, a civil forfeiture case was filed by the United States government against Hobby Lobby, which Hobby Lobby and the Green family lost. So this goes back to Hobby Lobby, dude. They're trying to get information on Gilgamesh and Echidnu and Humbaba and what the Saddam Hussein, reincarnation, Nebuchadnezzar, stargate. U.S. Customs agreed to send back the 3,800 items that they seized in 2018, but in 2020, Steve Green agreed to return 11,500 more. In total, the Green family had more than 15,300 artifacts, and additionally, Hobby Lobby had to pay a $3 million fine. Due to this scandal occurring, some people fully believe that George Bush invaded Iraq to plunder it for Christian artifacts, to find the Gilgamesh tomb, the tomb of Gilgamesh, and bring home the loot. Oh my God. And, you know, we had a piece of the Epic of Gilgamesh. What do you guys think down below? Is there any credence to any of this? Does any of this stuff make sense? I believe all of it, 110%. Anyways, thanks for watching, my friends. Go to sour.gg, buy some candy, go to Gump Club, watch some uncensored videos, and leave a suggestion of what you want to see down below in terms of crazy shit to cover on the channel. Let me know, seriously. Cool. Thank you all so much for watching.